You could be living your life, you have a bad thought, and it ruins your whole day. Or you're chilling in the bed, you're watching Netflix, and you have a thought, and you're like spiraling now. And sometimes we just need that moment. Okay, I need something right now. I don't want to have to call my mom again, my friend again. It's 3 o'clock on a Tuesday, and I need a word of encouragement right now. That really, really helps. So today I want to talk to y'all about 5 of the most underrated and honestly completely different tips I have for not only improving your relationship with God, but also just improving your life. I have some tips for if you're struggling mentally, if you need, you need help, and maybe you're not comfortable or in a position to reach out to a friend or to a family member. There are things you can still do that are very easy, don't take a long time, and will make you feel better instantaneously. So let's jump right into it. The first one is pretty different. It's pretty, I think it's pretty outlandish, but it's something that we do all the time. We're just putting it into practice in order to improve our mental health. So that is going to be making voice memos to yourself. And that literally means opening up your voice app and talking to yourself, talking to you, working through your thoughts, working through your emotions, and giving yourself advice on how to navigate what it is that you're feeling right now. This has really helped me because some of y'all might have heard the saying, like, you can't fight thought with thought. I do feel like that rings true a lot of the time when we're trying to, combat negative thoughts, when we're trying to, fight the battle of anxious thoughts, depressing thoughts. We're trying to fight thought with thoughts, and sometimes it's really hard to do that. So you have to literally speak out of your mouth what you want the dialogue to be in your mind. And words are powerful. Words, that is biblical. I know that is. Words hold a lot of weight. Words are very powerful, and not only manifesting things into your life, but changing your mood, changing your energy, changing the way you feel. So speaking to yourself about how you're feeling and working through those emotions can drastically change how you perceive life in that moment. One of the things that I desire for myself very deeply is a long-standing and God-sent marriage and divine relationship. And it can be discouraging, on these dating apps and and you're living life and you're not really seeing that manifest. You're not really seeing that change happen at the rate that you want it to happen. So making those voice memos to myself to combat the negative thoughts of like, oh, there isn't anyone out here for you, and you're running out of time, and yada yada yada. Making those voice memos to myself really remind me of the truth and what the truth of the matter is, and it helps me to calm myself down in those moments of anxiety. It doesn't have to be about relationships per se. It could be about a job. It could be about your current living situation. It could be about anything under the sun. It could be about family and how to navigate those emotions. It could be about friendships. It could be about being tired of eating healthy. It could be about anything. But voice memos to yourself not only get those thoughts out in the moment and allows you to work through those thoughts in the moment, but when those feelings come back up, you have something that you can resort to without having to call a friend, without having to call a family member, on a whim, to make yourself feel better. Because a lot of times these emotions can come out of nowhere. Because what will also happen when you do those voice notes, especially if you have a relationship with God, is you'll start to receive downloads. You'll start to receive revelation. And things will come to you that couldn't come to you before you did that voice memo, because you weren't in your right mind. You weren't there mentally to receive that thing. You weren't open to receiving that thing. You weren't speaking out of your mouth the truth. So now that you're speaking out the truth has room to come into you and be spoken about. So you'll start to receive downloads, thoughts that you weren't having that now you can have with clarity. And again, when you go back to that voice memo, you're thinking about it, you're listening to it, and you're like, oh, where did that come from? A download, and that in and of itself strengthens your relationship with God. It strengthens your faith, and it gives you more of a reason to keep going. So that moves me to my second thing. I think it would be easy to insert it into your morning routine, is taking 5 minutes to breathe. And while you're breathing, say a word. And if you are someone of faith, say a word that pertains to that faith, that brings you peace in that moment. So for me, when I'm taking a deep breath, I think about God's grace, and I might gently say to myself, grace, 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 or whatever it is that I need in the moment that is going to bring me comfort. Now, the key to this breathing is you want to spend more time breathing out than you do breathing in. So you want it to be kind of like this. It needs to feel like a release. So you want to really push out whatever it is that you want to release and inhale what you want to receive. So spend 5 minutes in the morning. I'm not going to say spend 30 minutes on meditation. Meditation is great, but if you're on the go, if you're moving, you don't have time for that. If you want something, again, sustainable and practical that you can insert into your lifestyle, I would highly, highly recommend taking 5 minutes, just 5 minutes every morning, breathing, just breathing. And I would also encourage you, while you're doing this deep breathing exercise, to not so much focus on what you want. Don't focus so much on visualizing a scenario or fantasizing a scenario that you would like to see happen. I would encourage you to be present. Be present in the moment. Be present with God. Be present in feeling the feeling of gratitude and feeling the presence and inviting the presence of God, of Jesus, into your setting. Focus on that rather than focusing on, a vision of desire that you have, because you spend time focusing on that. We spend a lot of time focusing on what it is that we want, what we want to see happen in our future, but we don't spend enough time being grateful for the present moment, being grateful for being alive, being grateful for waking up this morning, being grateful that we can sit here and take 5 minutes to breathe. So I would encourage you to do that. Be present with God, be grateful in the moment, call on his name. Whichever word brings you peace as it relates to your faith, I would encourage you to say that word as you're breathing. It'll help tremendously throughout your day. You will see a difference almost immediately. For me, I see a difference after that third breath. After that third breath, I am feeling significantly calmer. I am feeling lighter. I am feeling that shift in the presence that's in my room, and it feels light and it feels inviting and it feels like home, So I would encourage you to do that. My third thing is a bit more common, but it's something that I'm noticing is very hard for people to do because they don't think that it's a problem, but it is. So taking breaks from social media, using that time to focus on a hobby or something that just brings you fulfillment, brings you a little bit of peace, a little bit of joy. That could be sewing, that could be cooking, that could be baking, that could be knitting, that could be something active, playing basketball, whatever it is. Take that break, because something that, that God really revealed to me and has been working on me to understand more is that the online space, as much as it can be a space for union and for confidence, confiding in people about things, it can be a place for funny times and laughing and joy at moments. It can also be a place that breeds jealousy, envy, hatred, even discontentment, impatience, that feeling of like you can't focus on anything, you don't have a strong attention span. That is patience. All kinds of things that occur when you spend too much time on social media. I would encourage you to find anything, and if you have found something, great, but try a new thing that you can spend that time focusing on that thing rather than being on social media. Because something that I notice is A lot of people think that social media doesn't have a huge impact on them. They feel like, oh, it's just, it's whatever. I'm just on here, it's not that big of a deal. I'm gonna just scroll. It's not that big of a deal. It is a big deal, especially if it's one, keeping you from having a solid relationship with God. Like if you're finding that you're constantly, making mistakes that you want to improve from, you keep saying you're going to do X, Y, and Z, you don't do it, like all of that is obedience. All of that, could be tied to, you being told to do something from God, from Holy Spirit, and you are too distracted to make it happen. That's not what you want. And that is having a big impact on you, whether you know it or not. So spend that break time on a hobby that brings you some kind of joy, fulfillment throughout the day. And you might even know, you never know, you could turn that hobby into something much bigger than a hobby. It could be a side hustle. It could turn into something that really brings you a lifestyle change. My fourth thing would be to be super, super mindful of the music that you listen to. Something that has really changed in me in my spiritual journey and has really, shifted my mindset and everything is changing the music I listen to. Something that, I think is funny is when I was younger, I thought my parents' music was like, oh, it sounded like old folks music. Like I thought I would never listen to that. I'm listening to my, at that age, Soulja Boy or whatever I was listening to. But now that I am, 29, I thoroughly enjoy the oldies. I thoroughly enjoy music with real instruments. I thoroughly enjoy music that you can feel the love that the person is expressing. You can feel the emotions that they're going through. It creates a sense of unity with that artist. It creates a sense of being seen and feeling like, okay, I'm not the only one that's been here. It can be very healing for you. But if you're constantly engaging in music that does the exact opposite, it stirs you up in a negative way. It makes you feel rowdy and unwell. It brings a feeling of unrest. It makes you feel depressed. It makes you feel anxious. It makes you feel angry. All of that are signs that whatever it is that you're listening to is not good for you spiritually. If all you listen to is a certain artist that is always on 10, always rowdy, always stirring up feelings of anger and hatred and sadness and depression in you, that's going to manifest in your life. You're going to see that in your life in some capacity. It can start out unnoticeable. It could start out small. It could start out, I'm just a little bit irritable today. But then you begin to notice that it's a more common occurrence. You begin to notice that, you might have a friend or friends that are moving, they're leveling up, they're doing better in life, and you're having a hard time getting there. That could be one of the reasons for that. One of the reasons for that, usually. Listen to music that makes your spirit feel well. Now, I have a hot take. I don't necessarily think you have to always be listening to gospel in order to feel that way. I think music with real instruments, with wholesome lyrics with real emotions that aren't toxic, that don't, breed toxic behavior. I think there is a level of contemporary and mainstream music, old and new, some new, that is a breeding ground for those kinds of things, for good things, for things that it's good to share in feeling with other people. It's good to feel a feeling of love. But if you're listening to a song that makes you feel depressed, that's very, very different than a song that you hear it and it heals your sadness. You know what I mean? So be mindful of the kind of music you're listening to. Pay attention to it. It's very, very important. Now, my final thing that I would highly, highly, highly suggest if you want to improve your relationship with God, if you want to improve your lifestyle, if you want to live a better life, is reminding yourself that your life and what's happening in your reality is what matters most. Sometimes we can hyper focus on what's happening in the government. We can hyper focus on what's happening with the president. We can hyper focus on what's happening on the news, what's happening in schools, whatever it may be. And that can make us feel like we have to fix the problems of the world. We have the weight of the world on our backs. And it puts us in this mindset of like, the problems I have are so big because this is what's happening on the news and this is what's happening in the government. And that is not, those things don't have anything to do with you. And I know that that is a hot take, but it's the truth. Even if something that happens on the news affects your life, it's still your life. How are you going to move forward? How are you going to navigate this new season that you might find yourself in? And it's just really important that in those moments that you find yourself hyper focusing on the news, what you see on social media, whatever is happening with the president, it's important to refocus yourself, okay, on what is happening in my life. What do I want to see happen in my life? And where am I placing my faith? Am I placing my faith in man, or am I placing my faith in God? And, you know, the Bible does say be anxious for nothing. You know, so if you are a true believer and if you have strong faith, you have to know that regardless of whatever is happening out in the world, you're going to be fine. You are under the safe covering of God. Take at least one of these things and apply it to your life, whether it be the deep breathing or, you know, making sure that you're listening to the right music, whatever it may be, whatever I mentioned here in this video. I pray that it helps you. I pray that it helps you navigate anything that you might be going through and feeling. And that is all I have for this video. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.